Welcome to a new episode of our monthly briefing, Eye on the Maghreb with Hafid Legouel. Hafid is a distinguished senior fellow at the Johns Hopkins Foreign Policy Institute and the executive director of the North Africa Initiative. As an expert on the Middle East and the North Africa region, he will provide valuable insight into the pressing issues facing the Maghreb. First, I would like to talk about Tunisia's presidential election. Kais Saied won by 90.7% of the vote, with a significantly low 28.8% turnout. While this result didn't come as a surprise, could you please tell us about what it means for Tunisia's young democracy, especially 13 years after its Arab Spring uprising?
The Tunisian election, as you mentioned, is really not a surprise at all. I mean, everybody was predicting that Said is going to win again, especially since he pretty much locked up his most credible competitor. He also sidelined all the others. The election commission discredited or refused to accept the candidacy of a number of other opposition figures. There is no surprise that, especially that the turnout has been really low. I mean, people don't believe any longer in elections, and this is not just Tunisia. This is across the board. Unfortunately, Arab presidents and regimes have learned that that election is the best way to maintain power, which is ironic. You have also we've seen these results in Egypt, we've seen them in Algeria, we've seen them in Tunisia. They're all over 90%. You know, realistically speaking, these are mathematical impossibility, statistical impossibility to win at that level. A friend of mine actually said, if God runs for election, he's not going to get 90 and 95%. So it is a sad commentary on the result of the Arab Spring 13 years later, both in Egypt and in Tunisia, also in Algeria in some extent, where they had for the past 20 years or so a little bit more margin for freedom and democratic governance. So it is basically another sad result of allowing these regimes to continue. The sad part and the most really significant part for me is how the US and Europe and other countries recognize these results and use them as a cover to say, oh, we are dealing with an elected president, we're dealing with an elected regime. So they've been designed basically to just play a game.
Next, I would like to hear your insight regarding the recent European policies regarding migration issued from the African continent. How will the new France-Italy agreement on exchanging information about migrant trafficking, along with broader European policies, impact the safety of migrants traveling through North Africa?
The immigration issue has become, a repeat issue for Europe throughout the years. But the reality is, Europe has not been able to come up with a real solution to this because they're dealing with it on the surface. They're dealing with it purely from a security point of view. They're dealing with it by basically exporting it back to North African countries because they don't want to show that it is quite abusive to human trafficking. They don't want these people to be in camps in Europe, in Italy, and in France, because human rights organizations in Europe, legal frameworks in Europe will not accept that. So what they're doing is they're trying to turn them back into Libya, which is in the midst of a civil war and violence, to Tunisia, where they become a currency where governments basically just accept or work with the Europeans on all kinds of security arrangement and basically storage for these human beings in exchange for financial and economic support, like in Tunisia, and also in Libya. They pay basically to have these countries keep them. The problem is some of these European countries, like Italy, are working with the very militias that are responsible for this outrageous human rights abuse by paying them money to do two things. One is provide support information to Europeans and the Italian Navy to stop these boats in the Mediterranean, and also they're getting money from the immigrants themselves to put them on these boats. So it has become a very strange, very immoral, sustainable economy, where the very criminals who are perpetuating this outrage are getting the benefits from Europe. Europe needs to know once and for all it will never stop human migration. It Human migration is a human history, and it will not stop just simply by trying to put these human beings in concentration camps. No other word to describe it.
Thank you very much, Hafid. We look forward to seeing you again next month on Eye on the Maghreb and explore more about the latest from the North African region.